body of Tim Miller's daughter, Laura, is one of 4 that turned up in this League City field between 1983 and 1991.
Why don't we want to solve this? This is a big deal here.
It was kind of a Wild West. There was a lot of good old boys type stuff going on.
I invented drive-by shootings in Dickinson, Texas. Yes, I fought Clyde Hedrick.
Wrong place, wrong time, you know, run into the devil sometimes.
Now we really have a reason for this to be called the damn killing fields. It was crazy. I don't know if I really can't even put my finger on all the emotions that I was going through.
I have very, very fond memories of being with her. My grandfather was the last person to see her. And she was, "Bye, Daddy." She had helped him cut a limb off a tree. She climbed the tree for him that day and cut the limb down and helped him work in his garden. So they hung out all day together that day. And he told her that, you know, I'm gonna go home and I'll be at Josie's tomorrow. She just said, "I'm going to the store, I'm gonna get a ride." It wasn't uncommon.
But your dad was like, "No, I'll take you, nothing."
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. "You want to ride?" "No, Dad, I got it." She was spotted using that phone at the convenience store, according to the clerk. I mean, but all the details were fuzzy back then. There was no surveillance cameras. There wasn't anybody paying attention. She was a regular, so I don't think she stood out that day in any particular way, except she knew the clerk. She saw her on the phone. It was right before Halloween, and we were at my grandparents' house because we always went over there for the holidays. And I remember my mother snapping and saying, "How can you even think about Halloween when we haven't heard from Heide?" I think we were just grasping at trying to have some level of normalcy because my grandparents were so distraught. I mean, they were just beside themselves with worry. I'm Nina Yeager, and I'm Heide's niece, the first victim of the killing fields in Lake City, Texas. She said, if anything ever happens to me, go to the League City Police because I have friends there. And unfortunately, that didn't seem to be the truth.
They think that maybe she just ran off with somebody.
Well, that's what they wanted to tell us. She didn't want to be found. She's an adult. She just went missing on her own. And she didn't want us looking for her. Don't put out flyers. Don't go to the media. That was a big one.
Why?
You know, Robert, if I had the answer to that, it would be amazing. As you can imagine, I mean, it fractured us. It was something missing after that. Not just her physically, but just the light in my grandparents' eyes. It's like it got snuffed out when they found her remains. There was no hope of her coming back. And she had a beautiful 5-year-old daughter that they had to soldier up and, you know, take care of. But nothing was ever the same. Holidays, Christmas, Easter, around when she was found, her birthday was April 30th. It was never the same again after that, and I wonder how differently all of our lives would have been.
September 10th, 1984, and I'll never ever forget that day. I was getting ready to walk out the door to go Calder Drive and Main Street to work on Calder Shop Center, and Laura said, "Dad, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure, sis, what's on your mind?" And she said, "Is it okay if Vernon comes over tonight?" Which Vernon was Laura's boyfriend. And I said, "I believe that'd be a good idea." We just moved in this house from Dickinson. Tim Miller, Laura Miller's father, and also founder, director of Texas EquiSearch. And of course, the day you move in, your phone wasn't hooked up. It normally took 3 or 4 days way back then. There was actually a payphone at a convenience store right at the end of 517 and Hobbs Road, which is maybe a half mile away from the house. So I said, but when Mom comes home for her lunch break, have her take you down to the payphone and call Vernon and say, Dad says it's okay to come over. So anyhow, yeah, her mother took her there and Laura's talking on the phone and stuff, and I guess her mom says, Laura, hurry up, I'm gonna be late going back to work. And Laura says, Mom, I just want to talk to Vernon a little bit longer. And she said, all right, be careful, see when I get home. Well, Laura's mom got home and Laura wasn't there, and of course she was concerned. We thought there for a moment that maybe Vernon got there a little bit early and the kids were out walking, because they would walk and walk and walk. Oh my God, the kids walked a lot. Then we got a knock on the door and it was Vern. And we said, where's Laura? And he said, well, I don't know. She said I could come over. We panicked at that moment, but again, not to the point that I think Laura was murdered. Laura had a seizure problem. She had to be on her medication twice a day, and we said, oh my God, she was walking back from the store. She had a seizure, somebody took her to the hospital. So we went to Clear Lake Hospital, we went to St. John's Hospital, and no Laura. The next morning, we reported her missing in the League City Police Department. And you know what? I'm not out to slander police departments, but I'm just going to tell the truth. And when I reported her missing, I'll never forget this. Detective literally rolled his eyes at me. And he said, well, you know, y'all just moved from Dickinson to League City. Laura just turned 16. You know, that's a age when they run away. And I said, well, even if that's the case, Laura's in trouble because she has to have her medication twice a day or she'll go into seizures. 2 days later, our phone got hooked up. We went back to League City Police Department, and I said, listen, nobody's seen Laura. Here's our phone number. I said, now I'm really, really concerned. I said, because 5, 6 months ago, the body was found somewhere off of Calder Drive. I said, this is a small town, this stuff doesn't happen. I said, would you please tell me where the property is at or please search it? Same detective. And he says, yeah, that girl Heidi, she worked at a bar. Somebody took her out after the bar closed to have sex. She did give up sex. They murdered her, threw her out. Isolated incident. I'll never forget the words, isolated incident. And they said, don't talk to Heidi's parents because they're trying to get over Heidi's death. Go home, wait by your phone, Laura's going to be calling. So I went to the police department the next week, went to the next week, went to the next week. The job went to hell. And, you know, life just started turning into shambles.
We got a call from the dispatcher that said that two kids on dirt bikes found what they thought was possibly a deceased person. When I got to the scene, I knew immediately it was a human. You know, I could smell the decomposition. Robert Valentine, I'm a former League City police officer. I could tell it was a female, long, dark hair, auburn hair, and I didn't want to get that close, and I just wanted to, again, back off, but I knew what it was, and it was kind of eerie because I'm looking around and I'm wondering what else is out here. I notified the dispatcher and asked for Tom, the other officer, to come by the scene, and when he did, we started securing the location, and there was a point where we just kind of scattered, moved out a wider area. I saw what I thought was possibly some remains, but I wasn't sure because they were in the brush. And I'm looking, and about that time, Tom called out he had found a skull. And I thought, oh, this is another one. What do we got here? I think both of us were somewhat taken back, like we weren't expecting this. We were just looking for evidence from the original victim. And boom, we found the second one. And there we backed off and said, okay, that's it. We're not going to touch anything else. Who would have done this? Who came out here? It had to be someone who knew the area or someone who frequented that area, possibly. It was a muddy dirt road at that time that came to a dead end, if you will. Once you passed the scene where the bodies were, part of the oil fields that were still out there. A lot of people would dump trash. Unless you would have gone out there quite often or maybe knew that area, you wouldn't know where it was going. So the thoughts were, we got to secure the scene. We have to make sure that nothing else is disturbed and go forward. We knew at that time, Tom and I were talking, we knew at that time that there had also been another homicide out there previously, and that was Heide Fye. And I remember looking at the scene and where the three bodies were, it was almost like a direct line, if you will. And I thought that was a little odd. So at that point, we contacted CID. The scene was somewhat secure, but not secured as you would hoped it would have been. That was somewhat disappointing, because here we have 2 bodies now, and they were going to do it the next day. And we had no authority to start doing anything, and we definitely weren't going to touch the scene. I remember we were out there and it was getting dark, and there was really nothing being done. They had someone securing the scene. It was a volunteer person, with League City.
Did they at least rope it off with the crime scene tape? Not even crime scene tape?
When I left, there was no crime scene tape up. There was a person sitting in a lawn chair securing the scene. That was pretty much it.
Reading the Houston Post back then, and on the second page it said remains of 2 females found in field in League City. We kept reading the article and it said same field Heide Fye was found in. So we actually took that newspaper to League City Police to say, is there any chance one of these girls could be our daughter? And they did not even have a missing person report on Laura. They just knew she ran away. So then they asked us for some of Laura's clothes, winter clothes, so they could do hair samples. And then they asked us who her dentist was, and we got dental x-rays. And then 3 days later, they called us. We went in there and they said, yes, one of them girls is your daughter, Laura. And I thought at that time that if they would have listened to me, if they would have came out here and searched, they would have found Laura's body. She would have been dead, but there may have been some damn evidence. My emotions went just everywhere. Why wouldn't they listen? You know what, I would go out there where Laura's body was found, and I would search this damn property. I wanted to find her little cross around her neck. I wanted to find her clothes. You know, I felt it's obvious there's got to be more bodies out here. I just got obsessed with this damn place.
She was a very distinctive looking young lady, if you will. And I say that because what I noticed right away was a gap between her teeth. And I thought, someone's got to know this girl.
Audrey was always really good about calling her mother on Christmas. She never missed calling her on her birthday. Well, Christmas came and she didn't call. Her mother's birthday is in January 12th. And she didn't get a call. She loved her family. She was very loving towards her family. It was just like she had died that moment. Even though she'd been dead that long and I'd been looking for her all that time. I'm Shirley Love. I am Audrey Cook's sister-in-law. She was a daddy's girl. And by the time I came on the scene, she was tomboy. Her dad, they camped, and she liked to go fishing with her dad. She had a motorcycle, dirt bike, She moved to California and was out there for quite some time, maybe a couple of years. And then they came back to Memphis and stayed for a very short period of time. And then that was when they moved to Houston.
She did move with someone.
Yes.
She had a partner.
Yes.
Do you know why she left?
Memphis?
Mm-hmm.
Better life, better job. Yeah, there just wasn't anything in Memphis that she wanted to do. And she has a very adventurous spirit. Okay. And so she wanted to see other places, you know, and do things that she never did.
How'd she settle in Houston?
I really don't know. She would call her mother quite often, but she would call a lot of times wanting money. And of course, her mother would always come through for her against her daddy's approval. Her daddy would always say, "You tell her that I will send her a plane ticket when she's ready to come home and get her life together." So the last communication that she had with her mother was to call for money. Earlier in the week, she had called and she had sent her money, and she'd tell her always to call me when you get it, would wire it. Mm-hmm. And she did. And then later in the same week, she called again, wanting more money. And her mother sent her money again. And she says, "Now you call me when you get it." And she didn't call. When her mother kept not hearing from her, she sent a registered letter to her last address, so she would have to sign for it. And it came back. In 1984 is when he was diagnosed with leukemia. So, and she knew that he was sick, and she was in Houston. And in some of the letters, she would ask her mom, you know, "Well, how's Philip doing?" When he died in 87, you know, it was like, where is she? I mean, you know, we still can't find her to notify her that her brother has died. About a year after that, it was like something is really, it really got under my skin. That, and her mother, I mean, I loved her mother. She loved me like I was theirs. And I could see what it was doing to her. I mean, you know, she'd lost her son. She had no idea where her daughter was.
How was the dad?
He stayed busy.
But that was a way of coping.
Yes. They couldn't talk about it much between them. She kept pushing him, you know, to go down there, look for her, you know, try to find her. He says, if she wants to come home, she will. You know, still not giving a clue that there would be anything that bad. Probably by 89, I had about decided that she had assumed somebody else's identity. She was a Jane Doe somewhere, or she had left the country. Because I had looked high and low for what I could do, the means that I had. I never gave up. I never gave up. When the internet came along, it's no telling. I had my office set up right in there. And sometimes at 1:30 and 2 o'clock in the morning, I would be in there on dial-up, searching, looking. I still had hope of finding where she was and contacting her, and whatever the problem was, to fix it and bring her home. And let her know, that everybody loved her. When I moved her mother out of Memphis to a nursing home close to me so that I could take care of her, we had to clean out the house. And one of the little cedar jewelry box things about that big, I opened it, and there was all of Audrey's letters. I was really excited when I found them, simply because I could look at the postmarks, what she was talking about, maybe names that she was, so I could find her. Every address that was on an envelope, I Googled it. I felt like so many times I was so close. I just needed to look a little further. And then I would just, Shirley, you gotta let it go. And I would give up for a little while. Then something would come back and eat at me again, and I would get back on the internet. The detective, I gave her partner's name. I had all the research and stuff that I had done, like where her mail was forwarded. She found Audrey and her partner, she said they had broken up because of the lifestyle that Audrey had chosen to be in with the drugs and stuff that, she had left. So Audrey wasn't with her anymore. Her mom passed away in 2008. Her dad passed away in 2012.
So they never knew she was found?
No. I always looked in hopes of finding her for them. Of course, I didn't want it to be that way. The way that she was, I wanted to find her and that she would come home. Not in a box.
I would say that she liked to have fun, that's for sure. We did a lot of board games like backgammon, canasta, that kind of thing. The other thing she loved to do was fish and crab. And I've said that time and time again because it was just a really, really peaceful pastime for her. Whether that would be on the Sabine River on the bank or on Pleasure Island or on the seawall, you could find her there.
Hi, I'm Diane Gottswin. I am Donna Prudhomme's sister.
She loved Janis Joplin, and that was her time. We came up where ZZ Top and Janis Joplin were coming up. The other thing that was the most important would be her children. And that's kind of hard to say.
How many children did Donna have?
She had 2, Chad and Brad. They were 12 and 16.
When she disappeared?
When she disappeared. I stayed at Donna's a lot. I babysat my other siblings' kids, but all through high school and all of that, I'd spent a lot of time with her.
When had you last seen Donna?
Well, you know, this was a different time.
Of course.
There wasn't technology. There were letters written and things like that. Or, you know, the collect call once in a while, that kind of thing. Her entire life, she's been in the Golden Triangle. It wasn't until she moved to Austin, and I want to say it was in 86 time. 87 is when she mailed my mother a picture of her and the boys from Thanksgiving, and they were all very happy. That's what we thought. We thought she was doing well, you know, and she was doing well. But unfortunately, she relapsed. And that's when she brought the boys to Louisiana to their paternal grandparents. So that's where they lived, in Ville Platte, Louisiana. My mother died September of '88, and Donna did not make it in for the funeral. So '89, she went to see the boys, and then she came to see me. A couple of weeks later, I had worked for a dentist for 8 years, and she knew my number to work. And she called me for her birth certificate because she was going to go on vacation to Mexico.
Why do you put it in quotes?
Vacation, because we never saw her again. Like, I didn't know if she died in Mexico. All those years, we had nightmares that we don't know. We didn't know where she was, right? So that was the last contact with her, was mailing her birth certificate to Bay Area Boulevard, Clear Lake, Texas. And I remember that like it was yesterday. I know when she was moved to Clear Lake, she was moving with friends. I don't know. But she was moving with friends to start a new life. That's what we were left with. There were decades and days and months and nights of nightmares. And fear. My biggest regrets is that my children had to watch me grieve this so much. And I did my best for them not to know and see it, you know, but definitely they did. Chad was in a MVA in 1999, July 1999, and it left him paralyzed from the waist down and the left side, and cognitive impairment pretty seriously. So he was in and out of nursing homes for a decade, and I was his caregiver, overseer. All Chad ever asked for was to find his mama. Even when I say it, I can see him. So whenever we would get there and walk in, he would always say, "Hey, Diane, you find my mama yet?" You know, because Cajun talk really fast, you know, and say, "No, baby, I haven't." So that was really sad to watch, you know, a grown man needing his mother. Fast forward to 2008, he had to have his legs amputated, and his last wish was to find his mother. I was living in Austin, and so I had already had detectives had looked for her off and on over the years, but what was important this time is that I went and spoke with a local investigator that's also the editor of the Examiner newspaper, named Don Dodd. I told him the story, and he looked for any aliases there may have been. There wasn't any brown hair, brown-eyed, missing unidentified women in databases or anything like that. And about 2 weeks later, you know, I went to meet with him, and he said, you know, there's not a trace. There's not a trace. And you have two choices. You can believe that she's remarried and living a good life somewhere, or she's no longer with us. And I said, I will never believe that she's having a good life without her children, because she lived for them. That was 2008. And that's also when we lost Chad. So he passed away that year. After that point, I had to put it to rest for my own well-being, you know, for my own mental health. And so for me, she was gone. One of the girls came and said, "Miss Diane, your phone's going off," because it was in the office charging. And when I went to go get it, it was my cousin. There was 3 missed calls, I think, and call ASAP. So when I did, I thought maybe something happened to my uncle or my aunt, you know. Totally out of nowhere, she said, "I just got off the phone with a Detective Tisdale from the League City Police Department." And then I knew what that was. So, I mean, my legs fell out, you know. All those years of searching and all of that, that she was around the corner, basically. She wasn't with us, but she was just that close. I'm gonna speak for Brad right now because he can't. He's not here, but I know what he said. He knows she didn't abandon them. So even though this is a tragic, tragic thing, for him, he knew that his mama loved him. She didn't just walk out of their lives.
Forensic genealogy is a fairly new tool in the law enforcement field. It's where you use DNA, but not in a traditional sense. My name is Richard Renison. I'm a retired special agent with the FBI. League City refused FBI's offer to use forensic genealogy to identify what was then Jane and Janet Doe, Audrey and Donna. And it was about 1.5 years that I kept asking for them to use this technique, and they were skeptical of it, didn't want to do it. I think that they wanted to be the ones to find their identity without having to use outside help, so they could say, "Hey, we solved this." I think there was some of that, because when the other DNA company hit the brick wall, that's when they said, "Okay, we'll let you do it." "45 minutes to get Donna identified. The next day, we worked on Audrey Cook. It took 1 hour. And they had been unidentified for 20 plus years, and it took 1 hour and 45 minutes to get them both done. That's a fantastic tool. Part that still bothers me a little bit is Donna's boyfriend or husband at the time that she went missing passed away about 3 or 4 months before we got Donna identified. And had we been able to use this technique 18 months earlier, we could have got a wealth of information. So I'm still a little upset about League City for not using that tool.
The investigation now is hopefully going to just take a whole new turn.
League City Police Lieutenant Michael Buffington says advances in DNA in genealogical research finally led investigators to identifying Cook and Prudhomme decades after their bodies were discovered. Interviews with family helped police find out how the women made it to this area. Now, the public's help is needed in piecing together the last 1 to 1.5 years of their lives.
Any little information they have, regardless how small it is, it could mean a lot to us. So I don't want anybody to think that, oh, it probably doesn't mean anything, so I'm not going to call. You know, knowing who Jane and Janet Doe were, that gives us two entirely subsets of people to go interview to find out commonalities between all the victims, and we just haven't hit that pot of gold yet that's going to be the aha moment for the case.
Did that surprise you?
It did. I really thought that once they were identified that was going to be the final piece to the puzzle, and it hasn't been.
When Donna's body was found, which of course was Janet Doe at that time, it was like, now we really have a reason for this to be called the damned killing fields.
As you can imagine, I mean, it fractured us. It was something missing after that. Not just her physically, but just the light in my grandparents' eyes. It's like it got snuffed out when they found her remains.
September 10th, 1984, and I'll never ever forget that day.
It was just like she had died that moment. Even though she'd been dead that long and I'd been looking for her all that time.
There were decades and days and months and nights of nightmares and fear.
I used to walk up to this cross, just like this, and I'd look at that cross, and I'd look at Laura's picture. I'd say, Laura, please don't hate your daddy. I can't come out here anymore. I have to put my life back together. And literally, Robert, I'd be walking away like this, and over my left shoulder, I'd hear this little voice say, Dad, don't quit. It's like, damn you, Laura, what are you talking about? when Laura's body was found, one of the things I was so pissed off about is I did everything I knew how to do to keep this little girl alive, and somebody else determined to take her life. Tim Miller, Laura Miller's father, and also founder, director of Texas EquiSearch. And we came out here, and we walked around, and it was all grown up and stuff, and it was an old, basically abandoned oil field. And I don't know how much time I spent out here, and then we see this little path going in somewhere, and walked in there and seen all the flags where Laura's body parts were found. And then only about 60 feet away, we seen another flag and crime scene tape, of course, where then Jane Doe, now known as Audrey Cook, was found. And I remember the anger that set in at that time. I thought at that time that if they would have listened to me, if they would have came out here and searched, they would have found Laura's body. She would have been dead, but there may have been some damn evidence. You just want to believe everything, and the calls I got from psychics and stuff. Oh my God, I'd go all over the place at that time. There was actually an Indian one time that came out here and set up a teepee and stuff, and it was going to get rid of all the evil and find out who killed, you know, the girls and everything. And at that time I believed that. I came out here, I sat with him, smoked a peace pipe, did all kind of crazy stuff looking back. I lost all faith in the police department. So I was believing in psychics, I was believing in Indians, I was, they don't teach you how to do this in school or anywhere when you got a child that's missing.
How did it affect your marriage?
Oh, Laura's mom and me got divorced 6 months after Laura's body was found. And looking back, there was a lot of struggles in our life because of Laura's physical condition and now mental condition and stuff, and it took a huge strain on the family, a huge strain. And you know, we lost a son by crib death, and I don't know we ever got over that. And then my brother committed suicide just prior to Laura's disappearance. And so there was a lot of losses, there was a lot of grief, and there was a breaking point. Alcohol did a wonderful job for a while. For a while. It's been many, many years since I've had a drink. Laura's body is found February 2nd. February 17th, we had Laura's funeral scheduled. And 2 days prior to that, Rex Fancher, detective, came back to me and he said, listen, is there any way you can just have a memorial service? Because the medical examiner wants to keep Laura's body a little bit longer. He wants to do some work on it, see if we can determine cause of death and stuff. Well, of course, as a father, I said, yeah, I want to know what she died of and stuff. So yes, we'll do that. I said, how much longer do you think? He said, probably 60 days. And I said, it's not a problem. Well, 60 days came and went. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years and 9 months later, we finally got to get Laura's remains. 3 years and 9 months.
Did they determine what killed her?
No. So there was Laura's mom, Laura's sister, Laura's boyfriend, and me. It was very quiet and private. We buried Laura. We got her little headstone, and Laura finally has her little resting place. I'll never forget, it was November 1989. We finally buried Laura. March of 1992, there was another chain of custody where League City Police Department's gotten basically all Laura's remains from her shoulders through her hips and sent off in a FedEx box to some college for them to just do research on. And it's like, wait a minute, how could that happen?
You found out that even though you buried your daughter in 1989, the paperwork showed that some of her remains had been sent off to a college for...
1992, just research. Then I was looking through some more of the paperwork, and then 2 years later, there's another chain of custody where some more of Laura's remains and her hair was sent off. So I've got this 2 chain of custody papers. I go to League City Police Department. Now Rex Fancher is chief of police, and I go in his office. I'm screaming at him. I said, Rex, where the hell's my daughter? Oh, Tim, you buried her. I said, I thought that I did. I said, but I got some paperwork that says something different. They said, well, let us make copies of that. We'll look into it. I'll never forget, it was on a Monday. They said, we'll get back to you by Friday. Well, of course, Friday, they didn't get back with me. The next Friday, they did. And then the next week, I got a hold of Lee Hamill, my attorney, and we went to League City Police Department, and my attorney said, I'm not saying you're getting sued, I'm not saying you're not. We just want some answers. Well, we sat in there for a good while, and we didn't get any answers.
You did or didn't?
Didn't. And in fact, they didn't even want to talk. And then my attorney said, hey, boys, it looks like we're going to exhume a body. So we exhumed Laura's body.
You did that? Did you get a court order for that, or the police?
No, we did it. We did it. Now remember, there's 212 bones in a human body. Guess how many there were? 28 bones. This is the hard part now, Robert. Now, I didn't even believe it was Laura. I was lied to so much. I didn't even believe it was her. I took my own daughter's skull to a dentist and had him do dental x-rays. And yeah, they did determine it was Laura. Then we filed a lawsuit. Went to mediation before we was going to go to court. And then I came up with an agreement. My lawyer didn't want to do it. He wanted to take it to court. I said, listen, I don't want their damn money. I just want Laura's remains.
What was the agreement? What was the
agreement? Was I was walking away. All I want is Laura's remains.
And they agreed to retrieve her remains from the colleges?
They had them back at the ME's office. So then, we get Jeter Funeral Home. We have a chain of custody. They go to the constable's office. They get that body bag with the bones. They go to the medical examiner's office. They get what he's got. They take him up to Dr. Gil King, University of North Texas. My attorney calls me the next week. He said, Tim, we got a brand new problem. I said, Lee, what could that problem be? He said, Laura's got 31 ribs. The human body's only got 24. Well, then I'm furious again. I said, you know what, how in the hell are they ever going to solve this case? Now they got bones mixed together and stuff. How in the hell are they going to do it? So, of course, they got to do DNA, and they got to sort everything out and stuff. So then finally, we get Laura's remains back. We bury her again.
Who authorized?
I don't know. We could never get an answer. So then they find out those other 7 ribs that was mixed up with Laura, well, they belong to Audrey Cook.
Audrey was found the same day that they found Laura's remains,
yes.
Correct. Okay, but they weren't found in the same spot.
60 feet away. Three years ago on a Monday morning, why is all this stuff happening on a Monday? Richard Renison calls me up with the FBI and says, can you come down to my office on Wednesday morning? And I said, sure. So I'm thinking we got some new information. So I go in his office, and Jack Rohde and Kevin Petroff's there from the DA's office, and Jack looks at me and says, I don't know how to tell you this except just tell you. And I said, what, Jack? He said, well, they was going through the medical examiner's office. They found some more remains, and those remains belonged to Laura. That's only 3 years ago. I looked at Jack and I said, Jack, you know, in a perfect world, a child's supposed to bury their parent. I said, but unfortunately, there's circumstances once in a while where a parent has to bury their child. I said, do you think it's right? I get to bury my same daughter 3 different times because of all the damn mistakes?
The last time that they found some of Laura's remains, the DA's office here came and met with me, and they knew that I knew Tim pretty well, so I volunteered to be the one to tell him, and oof, it was a tough day. Tough day for Tim. My name is Richard Renison. I'm a retired special agent with the FBI.
There was a shirt that was found beside Laura's body. I didn't know anything about that shirt. Let me tell you when I found out about that shirt is after we had Laura's body exhumed, and my attorney under the Open Records Act got all the pictures of the crime scene and everything. It's pretty difficult to look through those too. And that's when I seen the picture of the shirt with a tag on it. So I go to League City Police Department, and I said, listen, where's this shirt? I said, and I wasn't being ugly, I said, where's this shirt at? I said, in 1986, you could not do DNA. I said, today you can. Oh, we don't have no damn shirt. I showed them a picture. Yeah, you do. Where's the shirt? They lost the shirt.
So there's a Western shirt that was found the day that Laura and Audrey Lee Cook were found in the field off Calder Road. It's photographed, and it was photographed, it looks like, back at the police department or the ME's office. That shirt has disappeared. And we don't know if League City's the one who lost it or if it was the ME's office who lost it. League City Police Department was in a different building in '83 than they were in the '90s than they were in the 2000s. So they've moved twice. And so when you move evidence, it can happen. The Galveston County Medical Examiner's Office moved recently, and I think there was some hope that maybe the shirt would turn up when they completely vacated the old building, but it didn't happen.
When they got Audrey's body, he put her in this big vat with boiling water and, from what I understand, kind of like an acid soap solution to go ahead and boil all the skin off of her body to see if there's any stab wounds, this, that, or the other. Instead, why in the hell didn't they x-ray her? Well, when they was cleaning out the vat, they heard something rolling around, and it was a Federal .22 long rifle bullet. So now when they get that bullet, they send it off to ballistics. Well, the kind of acid soap solution stuff destroyed the bullet, so they couldn't do ballistics on it. Why in the hell wasn't she x-rayed first?
The bullet wasn't there before they put Audrey in there, and the bullet was there after, so obviously came from somewhere in her body or on her body. And, but that also, I believe that process ruled out some ballistics testing that could have been done.
She was probably 5'6", 5'7", and she might have weighed 120 pounds, so she was tall. But she could hold her own. She would, if it had been where she could have fought somebody that was going to hurt her, she would have. I know her well enough to know that. I'm Shirley Love. I am Audrey Cook's sister-in-law. The coroner's report, I asked, where's the evidence? The fingernails were clipped. They're not to be found. That's frustrating because of the DNA that we can have now. If those could be found, that's frustrating as a family. It's not going to bring her back, but just for somebody to pay for what they did.
The day before her funeral, the funeral director, who was a close family friend and had taken care of my oldest sister, he actually came and picked me up. He said the day before I went to finalize the program, and he said, "Darling, I'm not going to be able to cremate your sister." And I said, "What?" And she's got 4 or 5 different death certificates, all saying something different. One even said a car wreck. So he said, "I can't cremate her and I can't authorize this till I get a valid death certificate." There were 5 death certificates, all saying something different, and I found that out the day before her funeral.
What?
Is this your first time to hear this?
Yes, ma'am. Was that coming from the Galveston County Medical Examiner?
I said, "We're having a funeral tomorrow. I've been waiting on this for 30 years. And he said, "Oh yeah, pick out the urn." So that's what we did. But what I can say to you, it was just like her dying all over again. Every single one of those calls, every single one of those events, when you wait a whole year for a death certificate, that's the final closure.
What did the final death certificate say?
A homicide.
A lot of bad luck in this case. It's unfortunate. It really is. And that's such an understatement. To say it's unfortunate, it's tragic.
When I'd come out here, I seen Heide's headstone over there. And I would go over by Heide's headstone and stuff. And one day I came out here and we was putting little trinkets and stuff on Laura's headstone. And I seen this family over there. And I was real reluctant to go talk to them because I remember Lake City Police said, "Don't talk to Heide's parents." And finally I got the courage up and I walked over there and I said, "Mr. Villareal, you're Heide's dad. Let me introduce myself." And he said, "No, you're Mr. Miller, you're Laura's dad." And I said, "Yes." He said, "I don't know if it's appropriate or not to talk to you because Lake City Police Department said don't talk to you." He said, "Mr. Miller, Lake City Police Department told me not to talk to you." It's the first time we met was right here.
It's still November 11, 1984. I called the police and I asked to talk to Gibson or to Pat. Since they haven't called me, I have to just keep calling them. I know I'm a pest, but I can't help it. I was a pest before. I'm going to continue being a pest until I find out.
That was my grandfather. He was all about documenting things. He just was always journaling, and he was always felt like he needed to just record things. Day one since she went missing, he was calling around, trying to locate people, trying to find friends, and he'd write down his notes. But because he had previously had a stroke, he was afraid he wouldn't remember everything, so he could tell the police, so he would go to the recorder, and then he would talk to the recorder about it, and he would tape it to make sure he didn't miss any details.
I wish there was somebody somewhere that would help. I'm still not going to quit. I'm going to keep looking, searching. I'm going to find out somewhere. I've got to find her. It means so much to me.
I lived with him my senior year, and I'd see him come home and sit in his corner, the table, with his glass of iced tea, and he'd be talking into his recorder.
It's really getting to us now that we don't know what's happening at the police department. I'm sure that they, whatever information they have, they don't want no one to know. But it's knowing at my insides now to the point that I'm beginning to feel that the police department of League City may have dropped the case by now. I don't know why I have this feeling, because they have not talked to me.
Once my mother trusted me enough to give me possession of this stuff, and I started digging into it, I feel responsible for continuing to not let her murder be in vain, not let her just be forgotten, and not let whoever did this get away with it. I feel it's my responsibility, and it's the responsibility of our family to continue to get answers and justice for her. It would be easy just to put this behind us and move on and just let it lie. My grandmother did what she could, and then my mom, she still runs the ad every year on Heide's birthday, Galveston Daily News. It's been running it for 40 years to honor her on her birthday every year.
Boy, if I had enough money to rent a billboard here in League City and put her picture, a big picture up there, to help, I'm sure that would do a lot of good.
I can't stop hoping. But I feel like, I won't let it go. Grandfather's still looking at me. And he's counting on us. He didn't do all that work for us to throw it in a closet and go, oh well, it is what it is. She was my Aunt Heide. She was his baby girl. She was a mother. She was a sister. She was an aunt. But mostly she was a daughter. And she was a beautiful light.
I feel as though we've got a serial killer out here.
This 1993 affidavit from the League City Police Department supports Tim Miller's claim. It says Laura Miller and the three others were killed by a serial sexual offender. Supported by an FBI profile and testimony from two former wives, police said the killer was Robert William Abel.
Back in this area here is the site of the Laura Miller discovery.
This is Robert Abel. Nearly 4 years after the accusation, he continues to live in League City. He continues to own the land where the 4 bodies were found.
Their idea was that I would have bought this property so I could come back to the sites where these bodies were located and gloat over the success of a murder.
Charges were never filed, and to this day, Abel says he's innocent.
Are you responsible for the 4 bodies that were found on this property?
Absolutely not. And you know, another thing that really...
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
After a search of his home and a lengthy investigation, Abel was never charged. But 4 years later, League City police say he remains a suspect.
They basically said you did it.
That's right.
They basically said you were responsible for the 4 murders.
That's right. They did. And, you know, you say, well, where'd I go wrong?
There wasn't Stardust Trail rides when Heide was found. There wasn't Stardust Trails yet when Laura and Audrey were found. He was actually in the process of building it and turning it into Stardust Trail rides.
So when did he become a suspect?
He became a suspect after Donna's body was found, because they said, well, his people found it and he's been out here and this, that, and the other. And I talked to Robert in detail about that day that the body was found. And then I actually got a copy of the search warrant on Robert's house and why they was going to search the house and when he bought the house, when he bought the property. Well, now it was kind of making a little bit of sense. Well, God, maybe it is this Robert Abel. And now I became obsessed over that again. Now there's new emotions.
Wait, but you put a gun to that man's head.
I put a gun to that guy's head. I did. That alcohol's wonderful things. Yeah, and I told him, I said, Robert, I don't want you dead. I said, because if you're dead, we're never gonna know who these other girls are. And I said, I'll remind you every day the rest of your life and what you did. I made his life miserable. I still carry some guilt about that. I do. I was responsible also for making his life a little bit miserable. But I remember that day that I seen him in Lake City. I pulled up beside him, asked him to pull over. And it's a pretty sad day. And he pulled over and I got out of my truck and he got out of his and I just hugged his neck.
When was this?
This was just a few months before he killed himself. And I said, Robert, I said, if there's any way you could ever find it in your heart to forgive me for what I've done to you. And I said, I would understand if you didn't. I said, but I'm so very, very sorry. And I hugged him and he cried and I cried. And he said, Mr. Miller, don't let that police department destroy your life like they've destroyed mine. I'll never, ever forget those words coming out of Robert Abel's mouth. And like 3 months later, he killed himself.
All right, Tim, where are we?
Well, right now we're right here at this 4-way stop sign at the house that we lived in back at that time.
So Laura used to walk up and down this street.
Laura walked up and down the street all the time. There's a little cemetery right here at Dickinson, Iowa. She used to hang out at that cemetery. That was kind of a little peaceful place for her.
How close was Clyde to you?
It's only 2 houses in between her house and Clyde's house.
And you didn't know that at the time?
I didn't know that at the time. And very, very, very early on, right after Laura's body was found, Clyde's name was brought up, and then Vernon, which was Laura's boyfriend at the time, said that they would walk from here to the cemetery and stuff, and this guy would whistle all the time and everything. And one time they stopped, and this guy was actually talking to Laura, and Vernon just felt uneasy about it and walked off and left.
I just tried to call, let you know that Galveston County come swatting my house this morning. I'm over here in Galveston County Jail for that Calder Road stuff with all them dead girls.
Body was found, one of the things I was so pissed off about is I did everything I knew how to do to keep this little girl alive, and somebody else determined to take her life.
I wish there was somebody somewhere that would help. I'm still not going to quit.
I feel it's my responsibility, and it's the responsibility of our family to continue to get answers and justice for her.
And very, very, very early on, right after Laura's body was found, Clyde's name was brought up.
She has a massive skull fracture. I mean, and I don't mean a little hairline crack. We're talking a massive skull fracture that would absolutely cause death.
I don't see how that's possible.
Today's date is April the 4th. It's Thursday, and it's 8:42 a.m. I'm Lieutenant Tommy Hansen with Galveston County Sheriff's Office, Agent Renison with the FBI, and you're Clyde Edwin Hedrick, right?
Yes.
Okay. Clyde, you know the drill.
Ellen Beason, along with a friend of hers, Candy Gifford, and Candy Gifford's husband, and a man named Clyde Hedrick had all been at Texas Moon, which is a club that was in League City, for a fundraiser. Ellen and Clyde Hedrick didn't really know each other. They might have met one or two times, but didn't have a relationship or anything like that. While the fundraiser was going on, a fight had occurred between Candy Gifford and her husband, because her boyfriend at the time, Clyde Hedrick, was kind of hanging around the table and...
Candy's boyfriend?
Candy's boyfriend, yes.
Okay.
And while her husband is in the same place with her, they end up getting into a fight and leaving, which leaves Ellen Beason and Clyde Hedrick alone at the bar. And so he would have been the last one to see her. And then from there, he came up with kind of different stories of what had happened to her. My name is Kayla Allen, and I'm the first assistant here at the Galveston County District Attorney's Office.
She lived with her parents, and so the next day they found Ellen's car in the parking lot of the bar. And so they started calling around, primarily to Candy. Candy reached out to Clyde saying, where did she go? And he gave a couple of differing statements. But at that point, she just became a missing person. My name is Kevin Petroff. I'm a former assistant district attorney at the Galveston County District Attorney's Office.
So the original story was that he and Ellen had left the bar and had gone to Candy Gifford's house. They drove by the house, no lights were on. And so they went back to the bar, and when they got out of the car, she started walking into a direction that he thought was her car, because remember, they didn't know each other. But she ended up getting into a vehicle with someone else. Basically, he left her alive walking in the parking lot. He went back in the bar.
I think the police bought it a little more than Candy Gifford bought it. I think with Candy, because her relationship with Clyde extended for several months after that, a year or so after that. So she kept at it. She kept asking him repeatedly, what happened to Ellen? Tell me again about what you say happened with Ellen. And over the time, his stories to her changed.
About 4 months into Candy pressuring Clyde Hedrick about where she was, he ended up saying, you want to know where she is? And she said, yes, I do. And he said, get in the car. And ended up driving her to Galveston Causeway. Area out there, it's kind of desolate, not a lot of stuff out there. It's a dumping ground. Have trash out there, tires out there. There was a car seat, not car seat as in baby car seat, but like a seat that had come out of a car.
Oh, an actual seat of a car,
yes.
Yeah.
He took her out there and lifted up the seat and said, there's your friend, Ellen Beason. And it was her remains, and she knew it was her remains because she still had her necklace on. And she recognized the necklace as Ellen's necklace.
There were threats made. He explained that you tell anybody, you could be here too. And I think threatened the rest of her family as well. So she didn't tell anybody initially. It wasn't for another probably 5 or 6 months before there was another fight between she and Clyde Hedrick when he burst into her home that she went to the police and told.
They went out there to look for the remains. It was nighttime, so it was kind of hard for her to remember exactly where it was because it had been several months since she had seen the area. They went back a day or two later in the daytime, and she was able to lead them to where Ellen Beason's remains were, and they were able to lift up the same car seat that he had kind of put over to hide her, and her necklace and everything was still there. At that point, what he says is that him and Ellen Beason left the bar together, so he admits that they were he was the last person with her. They went to the Dickinson sand pit where she wanted to skinny dip. He didn't want to. He didn't know her that well, but that she had taken her clothes off, jumped in the water, was trying to coax him into the water, and he didn't want to go in the water. And then he was just sitting on the back of the bed of the truck drinking a beer, and all of a sudden he couldn't hear any noise, so he flipped on his lights to his truck and saw that she was floating in the water. He walked into the water and grabbed her, and she wasn't alive, and he didn't want to be blamed for it. He didn't think anybody would believe him, and so he put her in the truck, went back to his sister's house, switched vehicles. Then he says he went back to the bar and I guess hung out there until closing time, and then drove around with her body trying to figure out what to do, and then he decided to dump her.
The situation for prosecutors at the time and law enforcement is, this is obviously a suspicious circumstance, finding a body buried this way. Candy Gifford had come and said that he put her there. But once the body was recovered, it was taken, as all bodies in this situation are, to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. And what the autopsy concluded at the time from a Dr. Korndorfer was that there was no way to say how she died. The manner and means of death couldn't be determined. So back then, prosecutors really, that put them at a disadvantage. And so the only charge that they brought at that time was a misdemeanor, which was abuse of a corpse, in that he drove around this dead person. That's the one thing they could prove.
I'm guessing the matter is closed at that point, or at least so everybody thought.
Correct. It was until League City decided in 1993 to exhume her body.
We know there was, as there have been for years, especially in the League City area, a task force that looked at the killing of young women. It's the Killing Fields is obviously well known in this area. And so I think as part of that task force, Ellen Beason fit that profile. I mean, a woman that went missing, showed up dead in unusual circumstances, except for in this case, you actually have a suspect. They just couldn't make anything at the time. I think they wanted just a different set of eyes on the body, the remains of Miss Beason, and so they shipped it off to a forensic anthropology unit at the University of North Texas.
They sent her remains off in 1994 to Dr. Gil King. And one of the things that he notices when he first gets the body is the skull and how it hadn't been defleshed. It still had all the tissue around it. So he was the person who defleshed it and removed the tissue from the skull. And when he removed the tissue, he saw a fracture that basically went from one end to the other of her skull. So Dr. Gil King had concluded that it was a homicide, that she had either been struck against something or with something. And so he made a determination it was a homicide. Just to have someone else look at it, another medical examiner, we then sent the body her remains to Dr. Mark Kraus, who was with the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office, and he also came up with the same conclusion that it was a homicide and that it was basically blunt force trauma to her skull.
Massive trauma is what they indicated. It was just a huge amount of force on this person's skull. This was done either with an object or against an object at or near the time of death.
And then from there, we sent her remains back to Dr. Korndorfer, where he looked at it again and continued to stick by what his original determination was, even though it had brought to his attention that he didn't deflesh the skull.
He was very clear in letters he wrote to Dr. Gil King and Dr. Kraus that was done post-mortem, meaning well after the death, that may have been something that was done during the disinterment or during their examination at the University of North Texas. And he remained convinced at the time that had nothing to do with the death of Ellen Beason.
How did he explain not defleshing the skull?
He simply denied it. He indicated that he had, in fact, defleshed the skull. Now, that was despite having photographs that Dr. Gil King took upon receiving the skull, which showed not only large portions of flesh on the skull, but exactly where the trauma was, exactly where the fracture was.
That would have been 1996, having both of their opinions and Dr. Korndorfer receiving the remains back and reevaluating it for a second time. And then she was put back into the ground, and that was it. Nothing happened with the reports or the information, so it just sat there.
Was there anything, any notation as to what happened after just?
There really wasn't even anyone for us to ask, like, why didn't something happen? Why did you all decide not to do anything? It's just work stopped on the case.
2010 is when Richard Renison, Agent Renison with the FBI, there was a task force created, and him and Detective Tommy Hansen were on that task force. And it was important to Agent Renison because he used to work for the League City Police Department, and even though he didn't work on the case, he had heard about the case and kind of, heard information that had been passed around through the police department through those years, so he knew it existed and knew that it was still unsolved. And so in 2011, he received permission to open this case back up.
They knew Clyde Hedrick was attached. They knew he ditched the body. The question was, is it murder?
Not being an attorney, I didn't know if we would be able to even charge him with homicide if we were able to gather the evidence to do it, because he had the conviction of abuse of a corpse. And that's what Kevin Petroff and Jack Rohde were very integral in that, and they did their research and determined that yes, you can still file homicide even though he's been convicted of abuse of a corpse. My name is Richard Renison. I'm a retired special agent with the FBI.
I think it was apparent to most of us on our side of the fence, the law enforcement side, that there was more to that story than we were being given. And also the main suspect in her case is also a key suspect in a number of other cases. So, we thought, well, if we could make him on one, that's better than nothing. Lieutenant Tommy Hansen, Galveston County Sheriff's Office, Major Crimes Unit, Cold Case Investigations.
We exhumed her in 2012, March of 2012, for a second time, that was a really tough decision to come by. We all felt it was the right decision, and we also did it with the blessing of the family.
She sent back to Dr. Gil King to confirm, because by now, like you said, it had been several years since he had looked at this body, and if it was something that our office was going to look at for charges, we wanted to make sure his opinion was the same. And so he was sent back to Dr. Gil King, and I believe Dr. Krause looked at it again and had the same opinion that it was a homicide.
Let's start with Ellen Beason.
Who's that? I know you showed me a bunch of pictures, but I can't remember the name of them.
Remember the name Ellen Beason? Clyde is old school. He will let you interview him, but he will absolutely just not confess. I feel if we had Clyde on video, clear video showing him killing someone, he would still not confess and say, that's not me. That's just the way Clyde is.
He was cold-blooded, but he's one of those people you anticipate that going into the interview, because you've dealt with him before, other people have dealt with him before, you do your homework and you find out that's his personality, We're dealing with a possible serial killer. He's not gonna have a warm blood in his system. We exhumed her body, means we dug it up.
Right.
And you ought to see, the fracture is there. And that's what that's what we got to figure out, how it got there. So I need your help on telling us how it got there.
I don't know how it got there, because there's no way possible that, no way at all. Just don't make sense.
He never really denied so much in the interviews that he was there with her, but that he didn't kill her, that she drowned.
I can't remember all these names back then. There was several people there. I already went through all this crap and trial for that. But anyway, so we get ready to leave. She's taking a dip. Everybody starts leaving. She's riding with me. I got my sister's truck. I get stuck. So while I'm spinning, trying to get my truck out of stuck, I hollered for her, let's go. She ain't coming. I turned the truck around, shine the lights on the water, get out and holler at her, and she drowned. Now, me being all up and drunk, and then knowing that, she's been all doped up, like an idiot. I panicked. I put her in the truck. I was going, first, I put her in the truck because I was going to Galveston to take her to the hospital. But I get halfway there, I realized this ain't gonna sound good, this ain't gonna look good, and you start, and I just set her down, figured I'd wait until I figured out what I was gonna do. And that's how that got involved.
When you drown, you sink to the bottom. Your lungs fill with water, and that's why you go to the bottom. So what he's saying is factually not correct, because he said he tried CPR and water just kept coming out. If her lungs were filled with water, she wouldn't have been floating.
You're saying that you and her were the only ones there and she was fine?
Yes.
Everyone else is gone. Next thing you know, she's dead. She's got a massive skull fracture.
I just don't believe that.
Well,
I know,
I don't know
no way in hell.
Yes, there is a way in hell. Because it happened. This isn't a theory we have. This isn't something we're saying, well, maybe she had a skull fracture. No, she had a skull fracture.
But I don't know how it got there, my point.
We had received more information, kind of a third story. When he was in jail, there was an inmate who had given information that he was talking about a female dying at the Dickinson sand pit. Kind of explained it, sort of the same story at the beginning of they went out there to skinny dip, she was out there swimming, he didn't hear anymore, turned on his lights, saw her floating. He walked in there, grabbed her, put her in his vehicle, and explained that when he went to go dump her body, that she came to, that she wasn't dead, which scared him because he thought that she was, and that he had picked up a table leg that was out there kind of like in the trash and everything and hit her in the head with it.
Texas law is very suspicious of jailhouse informants, or as they're commonly known, jailhouse snitches. Basically, you cannot make a case based on that. You have to corroborate have to have enough corroborative evidence to show that the person charged was actually involved in the murder. A bigger hurdle came from when suddenly, when we approached them years later, the medical examiner's office told us that they did not have the file or any of the photographs from the autopsy from the original. So that was certainly a problem that we had. What we had was Dr. Gilking's full report, all of his photos, same with Dr. Krause. We also had the correspondence between Dr. Korndorfer and Dr. Gilking, where Dr. Korndorfer was saying, this wasn't my mistake, this was your mistake, I defleshed the skull. And so we knew that there were files, we knew this was going to be an issue at trial, but we didn't have the medical examiner file. Finally, we were able to get a meeting with Dr. Korndorfer, who had long since retired. We met with him at his home, and at that point, he presented us with the file on Ellen Beason, which had the original autopsy report, as well as most of the autopsy photos. And that's when he explained, it turns out we had these in a storage unit in Houston, and so that was a big break for us. It was a very positive, very weird situation, but suddenly I'm opening up a binder of slides, and slides were in each of their little envelopes that you're going through. And so I think we both thought, well, this is great. We're going to finally get an answer of, was the skull defleshed or not? But in that very same moment, we get to this, what should have been photos of the skull, and they had been pulled out of the little slide holders. They were missing. And he indicated he had no idea where those would have been or why those had been taken out. So we had photographic evidence of every other aspect of Ellen Beason's autopsy, except for her skull where the fracture was.
Did he explain how he had that file?
He did explain that it was unusual that they would have taken it and put it in his personal storage. He could not explain the missing slides, but he was adamant that he had done nothing wrong in this case. He testified that this was the only case where he had taken home an entire file with photographs.
So how do you address that?
We had to basically accuse him of tampering with this evidence to hide a failure that he had made decades before. And it was an unpleasant cross-examination. He was angry. But it's something that I think the jury pretty quickly was able to see, well, there was some misdoing here.
I think what we wanted to make sure that everyone remembered in the end, like for closing the jury and just the public, is how much Ellen Beason had gone through. In the end, it was about her. It was about Ellen Beason, and we wanted to make sure that everybody remembered she was a 29-year-old, lovable, outgoing, well-liked girl, woman who was, early in her life.
The difference between manslaughter and murder is really the intent, and whether it's an intent to kill or a reckless act that led to a death. And because we couldn't really tell them exactly what the mechanism of her murder was, I think they tended to lean more towards where this could have been reckless as opposed to intentional. For a guy who had dodged justice for just decades, and a cold case from that far back, we were very happy with the jury's verdict. I think a large reason that we got the maximum sentence on the manslaughter charge was because of the testimony about the way he lived his life, and that primarily came from his daughter, who just told horrifying stories of the house that she grew up in and how he was a predator around her at all times. It was very emotional testimony, and I think it really struck the jury.
He sexually assaulted me. He sodomized me. I was a little kid. The first incident with him, I was 10, 11 years old. It was at a swimming pool. I'm Marla, and Clyde Hedrick was my stepdad. He's very manipulative and calculated. Evil. There's a lot that people should know. He never takes responsibility for what he's ever done. He's always denied everything. He would tell me there were certain things that boys liked and boys wanted, and certain things, that I should be doing in the shower when I'm in there. Little did I know that he had a peephole watching me the whole time. The only person he's ever cared about is himself. It's always been about what he wanted. I know the truth. He knows the truth. He knows. He could say whatever he wants, but he knows. He knows what he did.
One of the things that we gave notice of that came from a jailhouse snitch that we couldn't corroborate and didn't come into trial was that he was involved in the death of Laura Miller. So we put that in a court document that provided that notice to the defense. What I didn't realize is that Tim Miller, the father of Laura Miller, was watching this case very closely. He knew Clyde Hedrick, and he saw that filing. And so I got an understandably upset call from Tim Miller. And so we had to sit down, and that's when I got to meet him.
In 1988, I went by Clyde Hedrick's house in Dickinson, Texas, which he didn't live in the same house he did when Laura disappeared. I went by his house, did drive-by shooting on his house. I invented drive-by shootings in Dickinson, Texas. Yes, I fought Clyde Hedrick.
I've already been doing this for 44 years. Tim Miller got in his head that I'm the one that killed his daughter because I was supposed to be living down the street with him.
How is it you are connected to all these women and they all end up dead?
I feel it's my responsibility, and it's the responsibility of our family to continue to get answers and justice for her.
She was family. Somebody has to be her voice.
What I was told is that she was raped, brutally beaten to death, and left naked in a ditch.
And very, very, very early on, right after Laura's body was found, Clyde's name was brought up.
Either Clyde is the most unlucky human being that's ever walked the earth, or he's a killer.
You're considered the prime suspect and have been for a long time in the murders of Laura Miller, Heide Fye, Donna Prudhomme, and Audrey Cook.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
I didn't do it. I've already been doing this for 44 years. Tim Miller got in his head that I'm the one that killed his daughter because I was supposed to be living down the street with him. I didn't know then when I lived there. I was working all the time. So I've never met her, talked to her, never rode a bike with her, never smoked weed with her. That's all the things that he's got fit in his head.
Vern, Laura's boyfriend, when they would walk from our house to the little cemetery right on the Dickinson Bayou, which is only 4 blocks away from my house, Laura used to like hang out in that cemetery in the bayou and that. And Vern says, yeah, we'd walk by this house and this guy would whistle at Laura and stuff. And one time he stopped and talked to her and I didn't like this guy, and so I left.
And it was Clyde?
It was Clyde. Tim Miller, Laura Miller's father, and also founder director of Texas EquiSearch.
Well, it's not just in Tim's head. mean, the FBI considers you a suspect. The Galveston County Sheriff's Office considers you as a suspect. The Galveston County District Attorney considers you a suspect. So it's not just in Tim Miller's head.
But he's got most of them thinking. He's got a lot of people public out there convinced.
You did live a couple of doors down from the Millers.
Supposedly, I mean, I don't know for sure. He said I did.
Laura Miller, he lived just a block away from, and we had witnesses that said that he knew her and would talk to her. And one person said that they saw Laura on the back of his motorcycle at one point. My name is Richard Renison. I'm a retired special agent with the FBI.
Do you know Heide Fye?
No.
You never met Heide Fye?
That's what I remember.
Clyde came to her house while I was there with Brandy, her youngest daughter. And I remember grabbing Brandy and going to the back room when this guy came over, because I just had that creepy vibe from him. He had this stringy blonde hair, and I don't know why I remember, like, his fingernails were dirty. I'm Nina Yeager, and I'm Heide's niece, the first victim of the killing fields in Lake City, Texas. She worked for the Texas Moon. She bartended and she waitressed.
How popular was the Texas Moon?
Oh, it was the spot. It's where everybody went to dance.
Clyde the Slide, as his nickname was. Clyde the Slide. He was a big self-proclaimed dancer at the Texas Moon, and he would introduce himself by going out and sliding across the dance floor. Lieutenant Tommy Hansen, Galveston County Sheriff's Office, Major Crimes Unit, Cold Case Investigations.
Clyde was a good-looking guy. He was fit, he was pretty buff, and self-described one of the best dancers out there, and I think he actually did win some dance contests. So as often as he frequented the place, he would have had to know her, and there was one witness who said that they saw Heide in the car with Clyde at one point.
She lived at the time just a few blocks away from there. I mean, maybe 8 or 9 blocks from the Texas Moon. And I remember I was there with Brandy, Heide's baby, and she was only probably about 3.5 years old. And we were at Heide's house, and he came over. They smoked a joint on the porch, but I took the baby to the inside, and we just stayed inside because I just wanted him to leave. And I told the police that. I actually picked his photo out, a binder of people. And I said, that guy came to her house. I didn't even know who he was at the time, but I know I picked his black and white photo out.
She talked about a guy who had killed a girl and had driven with her in the back and finally had dumped the body somewhere. She said the guy's name was Clyde. She also said that she had known Heide and had seen her with a guy in a gray car. And she asked me if I knew him. I told her I knew just very little of Heide's friends.
What led him to look at Clyde?
A mutual friend of Heide and Clyde's, Cindy Williams, who, may she rest in peace, has now passed, repeatedly told my grandfather, you need to go look into them. I have a picture of all of us together. You need to have the police go talk to him.
He wants to talk to it because he wants those pictures that Cindy talked about. He's definitely hard on this guy, Clyde. And he feels that perhaps those pictures might lead to what he wants to know. Because the guy says that he didn't know Heide. But Cindy told him he did, and that he looked at those pictures taken, that Heide was also in the picture. And he says he knows the guy's lying. He told us about his opinion of this Clyde and how he knows the guy's lying when he talks to him. He had a book and he showed us some photos of the Clyde when the guy was in prison and now. He seems to think there is a connection and he's trying to find it.
I spent a lot of time listening to the tapes. I spent a lot of time reading through the notes. I spent a lot of time connecting dots, and I feel like I've gone to the authorities and I get such a small amount of their time to listen to me because I don't feel like they think I'm credible because I was so young. But my memory is very vivid. You don't go through something like this she was like my older sister. So you don't go through something like that with someone that was so close to you and not remember details.
He still maintains that the same person committed all these crimes, and he will stay on it until there is no more. He said it may be a month, a year, or longer, but he'll be on it until he finds out. But right now, he's convinced that it was Clyde, the way he talked.
Even though you were Clyde the Slide at the Texas Moon where she was a bartender, you never met her.
I know her from the bar, but I've never done drugs with him. I never hang out with him.
Okay, well, but at first you said you had no idea who she was. Now you're saying you do know her from the bar.
You said she was a bartender at the Texas Moon.
Right.
Okay, so, all right, then. But just mention her name doesn't ring a bell to me.
Okay.
It's just a name.
Okay. Do you remember seeing her niece when you were over at Heide's apartment?
Her niece?
Because she's the one who saw you at Heide's apartment. So she says you definitely knew Heide.
I knew her from the bar. I don't know her from no house.
What about Donna Prudhomme?
What about her?
Hi, I'm Diane Gottswan. I am Donna Gottswan Prudhomme's sister.
I saw a picture of what Clyde used to look like. And I can tell you exactly what came out of my mouth. Oh, that's Donna. Because he was a good-looking man. You know, he was a nice-looking man. He was known to be a dancer and a suave and debonair and other things. So I could see that. I had sent it to his wife, but I didn't know if she was ever had
sent Clyde's picture.
The picture to Brad's wife. And then I asked him if he had ever seen the picture of Clyde. He says, who's Clyde? Because he stayed out of it too. He knew his mother didn't abandon him. And he said, that's all I need to know. I can go on with my life now. I send him the picture, and within seconds, he's calling me saying, that's him, Aunt Diane, that's him. That's him, I know it, I know it. I know what he had on, I know what his eyes look like, I know his shirt, I know his jewelry, I know his belt, I know his pants, I know his shoes. I can tell you what car he was driving, what color it was. Now, one might think a 12-year-old, how could they really remember this? He has a photographic memory, number one. Number two, when you grow up in a dysfunctional home, you are very in tune with everything going on around you and you pay close attention to detail. And that's what he did that day. I think that it's a different conversation that we're having. Especially with Brad's ID and Clyde. That was her last trip home.
Her son said that he saw you with her in Louisiana before she disappeared.
I've only been to Louisiana twice, and both times was the wife I'm with now. I've never been to Louisiana before, ever.
When he saw your picture and said, that's who was with my mom.
If he says I've seen me in Louisiana, that's sort of but I've never been to Louisiana. I never even heard, I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never been nowhere near it. And so my wife I got now.
Donna Gonsolin was in the same circles as everybody else. She was just having a hard time.
But was she known to go to the Texas Moon?
I don't independently think we've ever been able to say that she was there. We didn't get an opportunity to interview some of the people that she was close to because they passed away. Donna's boyfriend or husband at the time that she went missing passed away about 3 or 4 months before we got Donna identified.
Well, Clyde, you know, he's had a pretty extensive criminal history for lots of different things. Thefts, weapons, drugs, alcohol, aggravated robbery. He's been handled for a bunch of stuff. Texas, Florida. He had a massive ego, everything that we learned about him.
Everybody was afraid of Clyde. He was very controlling, abusive, and manipulative. One of his exes, she was still very disturbed and very disappointed in herself for maintaining a relationship with him after the abuse and after things that he did to her. He just has left a wake of casualties.
It felt like it wasn't a matter if something was going to happen to our lives. It was more like a matter of when. When was it going to happen? Because there was one night, I got woken up in the middle of the night by my mother yelling, "Get out of the house. Clyde's lost it. He's going to kill us." And we're running to get out of the house. I look back and he's standing there completely naked, just standing there as we're driving off. I'm Marla, and Clyde Hedrick was my stepdad. He's very manipulative and calculated. Evil.
She'd say, "Oh yeah, he's trying to look at me, he's trying to have sex with me." How do I know? Why have I had been charged with him? If all these people I'm supposed to be so violent to, how come none of them ever filed charges?
How did his name come up in these other murders?
It was determined he had some connections to some people that may have been connected to some of those girls. And they had developed him as a pretty good suspect. And when this case happened, it kind of helped support that this is the personality that we're dealing with. We've learned through the investigations on Ellen's case and stuff, and comments that Clyde had made to other people that, do I have any doubt in my mind that he's potentially suitable for several of those girls? Absolutely, absolutely. I have no second qualms about that. All of them, I can't, I'm not gonna go there. He is verbally admitted to stuff, but you know, you gotta be able to add fuel to the fire to get a conviction on just him running his mouth. But he did. And that goes back to his ego. You know, his fellow inmates, he's, you know, running his mouth to them.
Apparently, this episode happened in I guess a communal area in jail. So there were 3 people that overheard this conversation, or Clyde giving this rant. So we had multiple people. Some were just not credible. My name is Kevin Petroff. I'm a former assistant district attorney at the Galveston County District Attorney's Office. Texas law is very suspicious of jailhouse informants, or as they're commonly known, jailhouse snitches. Basically, you cannot make a case based on that. You have to have to have enough corroborative evidence to show that the person charged was actually involved in the murder. One of the things that we do in preparing for trial is we've got to give notice to the defense of just every bad thing we've ever heard about someone. Most of the time that doesn't come in trial, that's not relevant, but it's something that puts the defense on notice. We did not have, and still don't have, corroborative evidence to support that jailhouse informant story of Clyde in any way being involved in Laura Miller's death.
I've never admitted any of this, and I've denied everything, and I'm going to go to jail. And so some young kid that I've never seen before, I'm going to confess all my sins to this young kid. It was just a young kid that was at my trial that said I supposedly told her that I kidnapped Laura Miller, and I had sex with her, and I saw I never said nothing like that.
Clyde was clearly the strongest suspect. And I remember we had a whiteboard with all these names on them. And slowly they would be crossed off, ruled out one way or another, and we could never rule out Clyde. Never rule him out. I certainly can't say definitively that he did it, but I can't, at this point, I can't see who else would have done it. But there's a piece missing before I'm comfortable saying it is definitely Clyde. And I can't say that it is definitely Clyde at this point, but I'm a long ways from ruling him out. He's the most likely suspect, in my opinion.
I've never been to the killing field they call the killing field. I don't even know where it's at.
He claims he'd never even heard of Calder Road, knew nothing about Calder Road.
No, we came out here specifically to mow the lawn for his buddy. I was here. He was here. My mother was here. So he knows this place. He will always deny. There were just times off and on, he would just throw things out here and there. And one of the things being how he'll never go back to jail no matter what.
What is it about Clyde Hedrick that is so special that dozens of people in multiple law enforcement agencies on the state, local, and federal level want to conspire to make you a suspect? Why are you that special?
I don't know. I know 2 people, Tim Miller, he's just doing it for money. And then my ex-wife got it all started because I divorced her. She spent 3 years begging me to come back. I refused to do it. And she made a statement that if I can't have it, nobody can.
But that's one comment. That doesn't explain why, after 4 decades, police in the FBI and the DA's office will not remove your name as a suspect. That one comment from an ex-wife doesn't explain 4 decades of suspicion that will not go away.
And now they're like a dog with bone. Now they ain't gonna let go of it. 2, 3 years go by, they got new detectives, new ideas, new technology, and they start all over again. They interview me again, cameras, wanting to see if my story is still the same as it was 2 years ago. There's nothing they can take to the DA. They keep interviewing me, same people, each time this person said, they got all these people, I've seen them, if they had all that, I'd be in prison for that.
I filed the wrongful death suit to let Clyde Hedrick know that Clyde, I'm still here. I am still here, and I'm not going to quit. And until the day I die.
Tim Miller sued Clyde Edwin Hedrick in 2014, claiming he has evidence that Hedrick is responsible for the murder of his daughter Laura Miller, who disappeared in 1984 and was found in 1986 in what has become known as the killing fields.
As time goes by, the more information I get, and the more information I'm continuing to get. I have no doubt in my mind, but Clyde Hedrick is responsible for Laura's murder.
Monday morning, a judge granted Miller's request for a default judgment and awarded him more than $21 million in damages.
We did reach out to Clyde on several occasions and invite him to tell his side of the story, and told him there was an opportunity to do that, and he wasn't interested.
Did he not respond, or did he just say no?
No, he responded, and he said no unequivocally.
A lot of the evidence we brought forward, we don't want to go ahead and talk about now because we don't want to interfere in the investigation.
Miller did say when Hedrick's San Leone home was foreclosed and the owners allowed him access to the house, he spent $6,000 cleaning up the property and boxing up Hedrick's items. When we contacted Galveston County District Attorney Jack Rohde about the civil judgment, he said the criminal cases remain ongoing, but added Clyde Hedrick has not been ruled out as a suspect in these investigations.
I was hoping that we could go ahead and do a deposition and ask the questions and throw things that we know at him and stuff. So it was another way to go ahead and question Clyde Hedrick on things that we know and stuff, and for him never to respond or anything. And he got very, very ugly with my attorneys when they contacted him. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm not going to get rotator cuff surgery tomorrow but you know what? If I wouldn't have done everything I've done over the years, I really feel as though this case would be locked up, closed, nobody'd hear about it again. Nobody had a voice in this thing. I was the only voice, and again, I'm not saying that bragging about it because it's been a damn difficult, emotional journey, if you want. I was upset with Heide's dad when he passed away because it's like, now I'm like the only dad to these damn girls.
I find it hard to believe that anyone has actually thoroughly gone through all the things that Tim and I have together. So let's put it before a grand jury. Let's let the people decide if they want him out.
But they say we can't use these jailhouse snitches. Well, like I told DA, I said, what do you think these people meant in Bible study? This family out of Seabrook called me one night and said, Mr. Miller, can we please talk to you? And we don't want to bring up bad stuff, but how did you handle your daughter being missing? Because our 14-year-old daughter is missing. And so when I went over to their house and I walked in their house, I seen that look on their face of the helplessness, the hopelessness, and the fear. And it was like, my God, that's how I had to look for 17 months. And the loneliness, and I helped them make some flyers up and everything. We got the flyers out, and they called me 2 days later. Mom did cry, Mr. Miller, thank you. Because of flyer, we got her located, and she's okay. And it's like, maybe there is something I can do. I say this all the time. I choked up a little bit. I didn't choose Equisearch, it chose me. Yeah, it chose me.
saw the for sale sign, called the realtor, and had a great conversation. And I was thinking to myself, this is perfect. And then he said at the end of the conversation, I'm obligated by law to tell you something about the property. And he asked me if I'd heard of the killing fields. And I stopped and I said, so are you saying that these are close to the killing fields? He said, no, I'm telling you, these are the killing fields. I just felt so defeated, but I still took it to the church, and I probably didn't have as much faith as they did, because I just thought there's no way they're going to want to be involved with this. But the opposite was true. They loved the idea of buying this property, redeeming the land, doing something good on which something very bad was done. My name is Dr. Brett Dutton. I'm the senior pastor of Magnolia Creek Baptist Church. We consider this to be holy ground and sacred space, and we will never do anything here. We've got plenty of land, and so we'll just build around it as needed.
They deserve that attention. They deserve that love. They deserve to know that people care and still care and will always care.